Warning. This is a comic, and all the ridiculous things that the characters attempt should never be recreated in real life. Seriously, don't be a copycat and try to imitate the antics of these fictional goofballs. Your safety and sanity are not worth risking for a laugh. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the humor from the comfort of your own couch. In the creepy corridors of the Qingshan Psychiatric Hospital, the most notorious room is 666, where a patient is strapped down with copper wires that seem to be connected to someone else. And who's holding the end of those wires? None other than a white-haired man wearing rubber gloves and a creepy smile. The patient lying on the bed looked like he had lost all hope, but little did he know that his crazy plan of imitating a story he read might just be the cure he's been waiting for. Or, it could make things worse. The white-haired man couldn't contain his excitement as he grinned like a Cheshire cat and tiptoed towards the outlet on the wall. With a mischievous glint in his eye, he shoved the copper wires right in. Suddenly, a massive wave of electricity surged through the room, making the hairs on the patient's arms stand up like he was caught in a static storm. The patient's eyes bulged wide open as he realized this was no ordinary therapy session. He was getting zapped like a human lightning rod. But the white-haired man was loving every moment of it. He cackled maniacally as the electricity surged through the wires and into the patient's body, hoping to see something magical happen. Suddenly, there was a huge explosion that shook the entire hospital. Doctors and security personnel frantically rushed towards the infamous room 666, wondering what kind of wacky experiment had gone horribly wrong this time. As they entered the room, they were met with a scene straight out of an action movie. The walls were charred black, and the furniture was in pieces. The doctors and nurses quickly realized that this was no ordinary patient and that they had to act fast to save his life. They rushed him onto an ambulance and sped towards the nearest emergency room, sirens blaring. Despite his friend's critical condition, the white-haired patient was determined to hop on the ambulance and go with him. He shoved everyone aside and hopped onto the ambulance like a man on a mission. The old man, who was the director of the Qingshan Psychiatric Hospital, stood there watching the ambulance disappear into the distance. He let out a deep sigh and shook his head, wondering how on earth he had ended up with such peculiar patients. One of them was an astronomer who believed the Earth was square and believes everyone who thinks the Earth is round should be locked up. Then there was the medicine professor who claimed to have found a cure for men to get pregnant. The inventor and fortune teller patient was another one for the books. Apparently, he loved to hide in the most unusual places. As for the two patients in room 666, Lin Fan and Old Jong, the director didn't know what to make of them. All he knew was that they were level 5 patients and had more quirks than a jester at a medieval fair. The director shrugged his shoulders and headed back inside, wondering what other surprises awaited him. As the ambulance sped towards the emergency room, Lin Fan couldn't help but feel like he was on the ride of his life. In fact, he felt better than ever before. Old Jong, on the other hand, wasn't as thrilled about the situation. He had pulled out his own needle and was eyeing Lin Fan suspiciously. "Are you sure you're feeling okay?" he asked. But Lin Fan just smiled and nodded. "Everything in that book was correct," he exclaimed, as he felt his body is all open up and can see the end of the earth. He left a broad smile and suddenly stabbed the needle into Lin Fan's head. Lin Fan doesn't seem to be bothered by the crimson fluid pouring out of his head. He seemed strangely at ease, as he had just stumbled upon a groundbreaking discovery. "I see a weird blue screen," he exclaimed, his eyes wide with excitement. "And it says, alternative world is coming, system activated. Doesn't that sound like something a psycho would say?" Old Jong agreed with Lin Fan's opinion. On the exact same morning, deep in the Tai Mountains, a massive creature with flames covering its entire body appeared. It was rampaging through the mountain, causing chaos and destruction wherever it went. The local villagers were terrified, running for cover as the monster smashed through buildings and swiped at anyone who got too close. A few moments later, the ambulance screeched to a halt outside the emergency room, and Lin Fan has whisked away on a stretcher. The doctors and nurses were bustling around him, trying to tend to his wound and make sure he was stable. But Lin Fan wasn't paying attention to any of that. Instead, he was completely engrossed in what was happening in the window in front of him. It was like a video game, but in real life, the system was connecting him to a powerhouse system. The doctors and nurses couldn't believe their eyes when they saw Lin Fan back in the hospital bed again. They exchanged confused looks, wondering what on earth he had done this time. Upon closer examination, they discovered that Lin Fan had somehow managed to give himself a second-degree burn from an electric shock. Despite his stable blood pressure, his heart rate was through the roof. As the medical team prepared to administer anesthetic gas, Lin Fan suddenly opened his eyes and declared that he was feeling great. And told the doctors that he is just purifying himself and that the burning flesh is just part of the process, as he wanted the doctor to remove the burned parts. The doctors and nurses exchanged incredulous glances and were speechless. The doctor was furious by his outrageous talk and yelled at him to be quiet. Seeing that he wasn't able to convince the doctor, he insisted on not be put on anesthetic and said his willpower is really strong and if the doctor put him under anesthetic, he will refuse to pay the fee. The doctor hesitated for a moment, considering Lin Fan's outrageous request to forego anesthetic. But then he remembered that Lin Fan is a psychiatric patient that doesn't have money anyway. So without another thought, the doctor slammed the anesthesia mask onto Lin Fan's face, making sure to secure it tightly so there was no chance of him taking it off. Lin Fan still wanted to prove his willpower, but he was quickly put to sleep. As Lin Fan reminisced, he was taken back to his youth, when he was a mere 10 years old. His mother caught him in the act of hammering his head and claiming to be practicing martial arts. Bless her heart, she knew that her son was far from mastering any kind of art, let alone martial. Lin was quickly rushed to the hospital, as he almost went to see his ancestors, but little did she know that Lin Fan had a secret plan to become the best martial artist. He was convinced that he needed to seal his manly spirit and ensure that his young spirit would never be released. How? By sealing his PP, of course. Genius, right? Thankfully, his mother caught wind of his plan before it was too late. She swooped in and saved the day, and more importantly, Lin Fan's precious PP was saved. The trauma of the event left him with a one-way ticket to the psychiatric hospital for a checkup, but hey, at least his PP was still intact. As the report landed in her trembling hands, Lin Fan's mother was struck with an overwhelming sense of disbelief. She simply couldn't believe what she was reading. Her little boy, who had always been so full of life and wonder, was now asking her to throw him off a fifth-floor balcony. Why, you might ask? So he could open up his acupuncture vessels, of course. Lin Fan tugged at his mother's dress, his eyes alight with excitement and determination. He was convinced that this was the only way he could become a true master of martial arts. As the report came back, there was little surprise to see that Lin Fan had been labeled a level 5 mental health patient. But it was noted that he posed no danger to society. But his destructive actions to injure himself were cause for concern. As Lin Fan finally stirred awake, he couldn't help but feel a sense of trepidation. His body was covered in bandages, a testament to his recent destructive behavior. But despite his injuries, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was on the brink of something truly great. Sitting on the edge of his bed, devouring a banana with a look of amused resignation, was old Zhong. Sure enough, Lin Fan whispered to him in hushed tones, a glimmer of determination in his eyes. He was about to break through to the next level, and he needed old Zhong's help to get there. Lin Fan then asked old Zhong to stab him with a needle a few more times, so he can unlock his inner strength. With a twinkle in his eye, old Zhong leaned in and whispered to Lin Fan, telling him that he had invented a new acupuncture technique, designed just for Lin Fan. Lin Fan's eyes widened with excitement, as old Zhong revealed to be the advanced version of the Earth acupuncture technique, his voice low and conspiratorial as old Zhong announced the new Milky Way acupuncture technique. As old Zhong swiftly jabbed Lin Fan with needles, the poor guy felt like a pincushion. But before he could voice his concerns, he heard a mysterious voice whispering in Lin Fan's ear. Suddenly, Lin Fan's eyes rolled back, and he slumped over like a soggy noodle. The alarm bells rang out like a malfunctioning fire drill, as the medical team descended upon him like a pack of hungry wolves. The doctors and nurses were like frenzied squirrels, scurrying about and shouting orders at each other. They whisked Lin Fan back to the operating room so fast, he felt like he was on a roller coaster ride. The system informed that the powerhouse system has been implemented, and upon successfully connecting, granting Lin Fan steeled and well-seasoned technique. The head doctor slumped in his chair, feeling as if his soul had been drained from his body after the marathon 10-hour surgery he'd just completed on poor Lin Fan. But at last, he could finally sink his teeth into some much-needed sustenance. The aroma of his favorite dish wafted tantalizingly toward him as he picked up his chopsticks, salivating in anticipation. Just as he was about to dig in, a frazzled nurse burst into his office like a tornado, shattering his brief moment of culinary bliss. "Doctor, doctor," she panted, her eyes bulging like a startled owl. Telling the head doctor that Lin Fan, who he just saved, needs urgent attention. The head doctor groaned inwardly, feeling like he was caught in a never-ending episode of Grey's Anatomy. He hastily gulped down a mouthful of food. The head doctor's face turned an alarming shade of beetroot as he flung his plate to the ground, unleashing a string of expletives that would make a sailor blush. "Is Lin Fan out of his damn mind?" he bellowed, his voice echoing off the walls. The nurse nodded solemnly, her eyes brimming with sympathy, as she agreed with the doctor's comment and added that Lin Fan is indeed a psychiatric patient. As the secretary's knuckles rapped against the director's office floor, "He is here to ask if the director is going to cancel the grave order." The director took a big gulp of his tea, contemplating the question by telling the secretary to cancel the order since Lin Fan is now back on his feet. Suddenly, the secretary's phone buzzed with an urgent message from the boss who owned the cemetery, which told the director to make sure Lin Fan is dead before ordering. The director let out a wry chuckle, marveling at the boss's unbridled fury. Honestly, what was the big deal? This was only the 80th time they had cancelled the grave order. Just as the director thought the drama surrounding Lin Fan's health had died down, the office phone rang with an urgent call from the vice director of Hua Chien Hospital. The director could feel the opposite side's blood pressure rising as he answered the call. The vice director slammed his hand down on the desk in frustration, his voice crackled through the phone, filled with equal parts of exasperation and anger, questioning why Lin Fan keep injuring himself. The director let out a deep, rumbling chuckle, enjoying the absurdity of the situation. He turned to his secretary with a grin, telling him to hold off with the cancellation. The vice director had made it very clear that he was not welcome there anymore. The vice director said he will personally drive Lin Fan back. The old director, however, had other plans and requested to let Hua Chien Hospital keep Lin Fan for a couple for days, his voice laced with an air of polite defiance. This request was like a match to gasoline. The vice director erupted like a volcano, slamming his fists onto the table with such force that the teacups rattled. He yelled no before hanging up the phone. Old Jong sat patiently outside the operating room, his mind focused on the intricate web of energy channels within the human body. He was confident in his mastery of the ancient art of Milky Way acupuncture, and he had decided to put his skills to the test on himself. As he deftly inserted the needles into his skin, the bystanders watched in awe. Suddenly, there was a gasp from the crowd. Old Jong had passed out, his body limp and lifeless. The bystanders frantically called for help, their voices rising in panic. The operating room was a scene of chaos and despair. The head doctor lay prostrate on the ground, his mind in disarray. He muttered to himself in a feverish delirium, his thoughts consumed by regret and self-pity. The vice director's promise of high-risk surgeries had seemed like a dream come true at first, but now the head doctor saw it for what it truly was, a nightmare. He had been too naive to realize the true cost of such operations, too blind to see the danger lurking behind every incision. As he leaned his head against the cold, hard wall, the head doctor felt a wave of hopelessness wash over him. He picked up his scalpel, his hand trembling with exhaustion, and spoke to the assembled staff. He has operated on Lin Fan 48 times since he joined this hospital, and every time he is on the brink of death. The tears started storming down the head doctor's face. The staff exchanged glances of disbelief and dismay but helped to wipe away the tears and sweat. Lin Fan lay motionless on the hospital bed. Suddenly, a voice spoke to him, echoing through the chambers of his mind. The voice told Lin Fan that he had finished one S-ranked steel and seasoned technique, thus granting an alternative world scenery and permanent body enhancement. As Lin Fan was presented with the opportunity to redeem the item, the system eagerly awaited a response. However, Lin Fan remained as silent as a sleeping sloth. The system, growing impatient, let out a deep sigh of disappointment. It seemed that Lin Fan lacked the most basic of virtues, trust and judgment. With a heavy heart, the system decided to take matters into its own hands. It was time for the system to step up and choose the best option for Lin Fan. The system chooses yes, thus the countdown starts, 36 hours until finish enhancement. As the news continued to report on the apocalyptic events of the day, the level 7 monster had been taken down, but the lower-tier monsters were still running rampant, like a group of wild chickens on the loose. As the sun started to dip below the horizon, the vice director could feel the weight of the day's events pressing down on him. He lay there, gazing at his watch. The sound of approaching footsteps caught his attention. A stretcher was being wheeled towards him, and a nurse announced that the operation had been a success. The vice director couldn't help but feel a surge of relief. It was like he had just won the lottery. Without a moment to lose, the vice director sprang into action. He barked orders like a drill sergeant, instructing the staff to hurry up and get Lin Fan on the ambulance. The vice director demanded to drive today, as he pushed the ambulance driver aside and revved up the engine. His joy ride was cut short when one of the nurses yelled out in panic. With a screeching halt, the vice director slammed on the brakes and looked back in shock. It seemed that one of the patients who had come with Lin Fan was currently undergoing surgery. The vice director couldn't believe his ears. The nurse walked up to the driver's window and handed him a face mask. The mask is from Dr. Wong, who is currently operating on old Jong, and Dr. Wong asked the nurse to bring this to the vice director. The vice director startled, looking at the mask in silence, his mind racing like a hamster on a wheel. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. The mask was written in bright red letters, and the words read, "I want to quit." Meanwhile, at the psychiatric hospital, the director was deep in prayer. He was calling out to Buddha with all his might, hoping that the chaos of the day wouldn't come crashing through his doors. But alas, the sound of sirens blaring in the distance shattered his peaceful moment. The director knew what that meant. It was time. They are back. As he made his way down to greet Dr. Lee, the vice director of the hospital, the old director asked if Dr. can do him a favor and bring these two back to the hospital and let them stay there for some time. But before he could even finish his sentence, Dr. Lee's face turned as black as a lump of coal. The director could see the fear in his eyes as he knelt down on the ground. "Please, don't send Lin Fan and old Jong back to my hospital again," he begged. "They've made all my doctors crazy." The director was left standing there, stunned like a statue. Before the director could even respond, Dr. Lee was off like a bolt of lightning, sprinting towards his ambulance with the grace of a gazelle. He didn't even bother to take back the stretchers. The director watched in amazement as the ambulance disappeared into the distance, leaving a trail of dust and exhaust fumes in its wake. He couldn't help but let out a deep sigh. The director spun on his heel to face and checked on Lin Fan and old Jong, both grinning from ear to ear. But then, a heavy sigh escaped the director's lips. In room 666, Lin Fan and old Jong were completely spent, old Jong frantically trying to flee while Lin Fan sat calmly, insisting he was simply meditating. As he pondered the bizarre messages from the psycho system in his mind about body enhancement, he felt strange energies coursing through his veins. Meanwhile, old Jong gazed up at Lin Fan with a look of pure adoration. They had done it. Lin Fan spun around and confirmed that both the electric shock technique and the Milky Way acupuncture technique had succeeded. Old Jong's face lit up like a supernova at the news, and he nearly exploded with excitement. Lin Fan couldn't help but chuckle at the sight of his ecstatic friend. Old Jong proposed a new and unconventional training method, hammer smashing chest. Without any hesitation, Lin Fan agreed, feeling the rush of adrenaline coursing through his veins at the mere thought of it. Meanwhile, the director peered through the window of room 666 and asked the caregiver if there had been any outbursts or histrionics. The caregiver replied no, but that while the two had been animatedly discussing the possibility of hammer smashing their chests, they have no chance to actually lay hands on any hammers. The director breathed a sigh of relief, feeling grateful that the situation was still under control. After all, the last thing he wanted was to deal with two patients who had turned into amateur blacksmiths. Under the cover of a moonless and starless night, a woman made her way home, her fingers tapping away furiously at her phone screen as she texted her friends. Suddenly, a colossal shadow loomed up behind her, causing her to spin around in terror. What she saw made her blood run cold. A grotesque, gaping maw, bristling with razor-sharp teeth, lunged towards her with ferocity. As the dawn broke, Lin Fan awoke in room 666, his body wriggling free from the bonds that had held him captive. He found himself stark naked, but more importantly, he needs to save old Jong. He sauntered over to old Jong's bed. Old Jong was amazed to see Lin Fan's belly fat had completely vanished. In its place, he now sported 8 chiseled abs, looking like the epitome of a Sigma male. His rippling muscles glistening in the early morning light. The repairman was busy fixing the faulty wires when he felt an unsettling sensation creeping up on him. His heart raced with fear as he recalled the countless stories of hopeless victims meeting a gruesome end at the hands of monstrous creatures. Suddenly, a tap on his shoulder sent him into a full-blown panic attack. He let out a blood-curdling scream that echoed through the halls, but to his surprise, it was just old Jong. The electrician breathed a sigh of relief, but the memory of room 666 filled him with dread. As far as he knew, the patients there were more dangerous than the special forces that battled the creatures, and even the creatures themselves. Old Jong had been a convenient distraction, their true mission being to obtain a hammer from the unsuspecting electrician's kit. They quickly made their escape, waving goodbye as they disappeared into the shadows. The electrician breathed a sigh of relief, happy to see them go. But as he lowered his head to inspect his kit, he realized with growing horror that his trusty hammer was nowhere to be found. Suddenly, the sound of loud banging filled the hallway, sending shivers down his spine. Despite his better judgment, the electrician couldn't resist the pull of curiosity. He crept towards room 666, peering through the window with trepidation. There he has it, a terrifying scene of old Jong madly hammering Lin Fan's body. The electrician was frozen to the ground. Suddenly he let out a high-pitched scream help as he sprinted towards the exit. The system appeared once again, congratulating Lin Fan on completing a D-rank training, allowing Lin Fan to enhance one of the following body parts: arms, legs, head, and PP. The system then chooses the best option for the host, which is arms. The electrician's eyes widened in horror as he was dragged back into the dreaded room. He screamed in agony, begging to not be brought near that place again. As they entered the room, the director looked at them quizzically, while Lin Fan and old Jong were holding onto their cartons of soy milk. One was claiming to be drinking cola, while the other was sipping on a Sprite. The electrician was extremely confused, as he was certain that he had seen blood on the floor just moments ago. The director let out a smile, tapping the electrician's shoulder to assure him that there was no harm or blood. However, the electrician was determined to resign from his job and demanded his hammer back before he would leave. The director demanded that the two return the hammer. Turned out, Lin Fan was hiding the hammer in his pants. The director insisted that Lin Fan drop it on the ground, but Lin Fan wanted the director to come and take it. It seemed like both were having a cowboy standoff, each trying to outdo the other. The director took a deep breath, contemplating his life choices, but then decided to take the hammer himself. His heart was racing so fast that he almost had a cardiac arrest, but nothing happened, and he was able to retrieve the hammer. As they sat in the cafeteria, sipping on their soy milk, an emergency news report popped up on the screen. It indicated that there were monsters in the Qingshan region. The two retreated to their quarters, gulping down another pouch of soy milk. As Lin Fan chatted with old Jong, a shimmering window materialized before him, announcing his transfer to an alternate realm. In this world, time would halt in his current world, and he would have to complete a mission to help Chen Yang overcome bullying in his school. Lin Fan woke up to a room awash with pink hues. He peered down to check the status of his PP, sighing with relief at its presence. The woman who called him down to breakfast was none other than Chen Yang's mother. Following her instructions, Lin Fan reached the bus stop to head to school, only to find the bus already jam-packed. A tiny girl struggled to reach the overhead strap, and Lin Fan immediately sprang to his feet, offering her his seat. As the bus halted at another stop, the purple-haired student held onto Lin Fan's collar and questioned why he didn't reserve the spot for him. But his moment of triumph was short-lived as the bus suddenly screeched to a halt, causing everyone to lurch forward. A middle-aged man with a scowl on his face entered the bus and screamed for help. As the cleaver-wielding man stepped onto the bus, his beady eyes scanned the passengers until they fell upon a small, innocent-looking girl. Just as he was about to pounce, a hero emerged from the crowd, Lin Fan. Without hesitation, Lin Fan sprang forward and grabbed the blade with his bare hands, holding it aloft like a trophy. The would-be attacker was stunned, his mouth agape in disbelief as he crumpled to the ground in defeat. 날 보고 있어 음악이 baby 너를 위한 melody yeah 네가 뮤지니까 잘 들어봐 play it